It's Tuesday, the 24th of September. I'm Randy Kure. This is a What's Up the Sports podcast. Hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for joining us. If you are joining us tonight, or if you have downloaded tonight's episode, thank you so much for the download. On today's episode, we will be talking about Vince Carter as he is headed to the Raptors at Scotiabank Arena. We will be also talking about Rogers Broadcasting as they are purchasing a majority stake of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. As well, we will be diving into the NFL and, of course, ending things off with our rapid fire segment. The roundtable has assembled this evening, and it is the big three, if you will. Tony Antoniou is back with us. Tony, how are you?
I'm good, Randy. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Hope you had a great time in Cuba. You look tan and beautiful as well. You always look beautiful, but you're just a little bit darker, which is great to see. Neel Katarey is here as well. Neel, what's going on?
How you doing, Randy? Good to be back, and hello to the other fellas as well.
Thanks a lot, Neel. And last and certainly not least, Dan Leggieri is here also. Dan, thanks as always. What's going on?
Hello, Randy. Happy to be here. Fresh off a fantasy baseball championship over the last weekend, and I am now the reigning champ in both my hockey and baseball fantasy leagues. So this might be my last podcast before I open up my fantasy consulting firm. And happy to be here.
Awesome, great stuff. Congrats. Do tell about the fantasy league. How many participants? Were they all friends and family of yours?
It was a 12-man league, and it was made up of a group of dads for an art studio that my niece belongs to. So I didn't know any of these gentlemen going in, but I sufficiently mopped the floor with all of them in my first year in their precious fantasy league.
Awesome, great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry, was it on a Yahoo spread where you had three outfielders, utility, and all that? Oh, good for you.
Yeah,
good for you.
Pretty standard. A bit of a different format that I was used to for fantasy, where you played each other and your cumulative stats counted towards your total score. If anybody's plays like that before, so if you win 1 week 6-4 and the next week 5-2, you've got 11 points for whatever it is against. But yeah, details of a not that exciting topic, but happy to be a champion nonetheless.
Congrats, Dano. It's fantasy is always fun, absolutely. And what seemed to be a lot of fun as well, fellas, in various degrees, was this summer that is about to conclude, is already concluded. I don't know when fall officially starts, but it was definitely an eventful few months during the summer season, from the Olympics, from Canada taking part in Copa. I mean, usually they're known as the dog days of summer when it comes to sports. I think it could be a different story for 2024. I'd love to start with what you guys thought was the top story of the 24 summer season. Tony, why don't we start with you?
Well, I think you mentioned it. For me, it was that glorious month of soccer nonstop between Euro and Copa America. And obviously, Canada getting to the Final Four of Copa America was just, it was just a phenomenal thing to watch and see and happen. And, a mischance here, a mischance there, they might have gotten themselves into the final, which is even more impressive. And then it's carried on. It's carried on to these last two friendlies they had against the U.S. and Mexico. They just were so impressive in both games. They took the game to them, both clubs at the same time. So I know we've been through this before, where they get us excited and then they let us down. They're getting us excited there. We'll see how it finishes. But that was my story for the summer. The Euro was okay. I found the soccer to be a little draggy at times, but I think it's because these guys play too much, but that's a separate story for another day.
Play too much in what sense? I mean, like with regards to, are you talking specifically with regards to European soccer players, or I mean, I think we have a minute to
Yeah, I
talk
think the
further
schedule is
into this.
brewing. You're starting to hear players talking about it. A couple of guys from Man City have talked about going to FIFA, and there's even been talk of strike. I mean, I doubt that's going to happen, but they're starting to mention it. I believe Virgil van Dijk is very outspoken on the subject as well. I've been saying it for a couple of years that it feels like these guys are playing a lot, just a lot, like year round when you factor in league games, cup games, international games, friendlies. Now they got the Nations League. Every 2 years they're playing in one tournament or another, whether it be Copa America, World Cup, or Gold Cup. So the AFCON Cup takes place in the middle of the season in January. So club teams are losing their players to those tournaments. So it's a lot of things. So you kind of saw if he played in the Euro, I noticed anyway. But overall, I mean, selfishly, I watch as much soccer as humanly possible. Give it to me all day, but you start to notice when it's dragging a bit, and I understand where the players are coming from.
I guess I could appreciate that. I mean, Dano, I'd love to get your comment as well. I've noticed that, and you guys know that really, if there is only one club that I follow is Toronto FC. Between Leagues Cup and the various friendlies they have going on with CONCACAF Champions League, I've noticed that especially from a local standpoint. I mean, Dano, you've been following soccer all your life, like Tony. You think it's getting to a point where players are playing a little too much?
Yeah, I agree with Tony. It feels that way. But there's so much demand for it. It's probably the one and only truly international or global sport anyway, where everybody has access to it. We're just bringing up to rear North America now with our level of involvement and the number of kids that are playing it and the viewership, which is great to see. But there's a lot of demand on the top players, and they are playing a lot. And I got to echo Tony's point. The best part of the summer was that 30 days or whatever it was when the Euro and the Copa were on at the same time. But I don't know if the soccer from Europe looked tired. Maybe it did, but it also just looked weaker and more, not as aggressive as the South American game, and the contrast was very noticeable. It was a rough and tumble Copa America with a lot of intense games. I think I was watching Venezuela, Mexico was one of the games. And I was like, this thing's gonna break out into a fucking riot. Like it was nuts. And then the contrast with the European game that's very fleet of foot and very proper and prissy. It was a lot of fun to watch side by side in that way. The icing on the cake is Canada doing what it did from our perspective. It's soccer is an interesting one where the time off feels very short. And to Tony's point, a lot of players are starting to speak up about it. I don't know what's going to change, but it might impact the quality of the game that they can ultimately put on the highest scale. And maybe we got a glimmer into that this summer when it was up against the Copa America.
I think the one question that I definitely want to ask you two especially is, should Copa go right up along with Euro? I know that all of the domestic leagues halt their respective seasons if in fact it does conflict. But I mean, the European Championships is essentially the best soccer tournament. I mean, World Cup aside, but we've had discussions on the level of competition and potentially the European Championships have more skill. But and I do think that there is something about having the Euro on its own, kind of like the World Cup. Maybe and whether it is possible with regards to weather, should Copa America go against the African Cup nations or the Asian tournament or something. For Copa to go against Euro, I think is not doing themselves any favors. Do you guys agree? Number one. Number two, is it possible for the schedule to change?
Well, the Copa's got Messi, right? It's all about star power. As long as the European leagues are going to attract the top talent, it's going to be the focal point. There was a lot of talk this summer too among my circles where, you didn't get to see a lot of guys maybe who play in the Saudi league now. Right? So they're taking they're taking some stars away from Europe, where the eyeballs traditionally are. So as long as the star power is there from the South American standpoint, they can compete with anybody. And right now they've got the hottest commodity in soccer in Messi. But if it's just a bunch of, and I mean this with love, if it's a bunch of guys that play in the MLS and in the Argentinian league and in the Brazilian league, it's just not going to draw the international eyes that it would having the guy who just won the World Cup, right, and is at the top of his game, as for the timing anyway, surpassed Ronaldo as the favorite around the world, right? You talk to, my kid is probably the perfect example. You've got an 8-year-old kid, and everybody at school wears Messi jerseys these days. Like they're not wearing anybody else's jersey except for Messi. And all the kids,
they're probably wearing Inter Miami jerseys as much as they are Argentina.
For sure.
Sure.
Yeah, and that too, right? So it's as long as it's like anything else. So the star power is going to drive the theater of it, and soccer is not the exception to that rule. Any sports is the exact same way.
I guess Tony, please.
Sorry. I mean, the question is, where do you put these on the schedule? I mean, there's something going on every year. So how do you organize this? I think this is the second time where they've involved CONCACAF. They had the Centenario tournament exclusively in the United States a couple of years ago, and then this one as the same deal. So how do you fit these into this massive schedule now that's happening? It's like there's something going on every year. So I agree with the Messi factor. Obviously, it makes a difference. However, I would say after Messi's long gone, because he's not going to play forever, Copa America is still going to be a huge deal in South America. It's not going to resonate around the world in the same way, but I don't think it ever has, really. I think you have the World Cup, you have the Euro, but at the end of the day, it's so huge in South America that it's not going to. I don't think it matters where you put it. It's not going to detract South American people from being into that tournament.
No, I definitely get it for sure. So Dano, you were suggesting that Canada and Copa was your top story during the summer. Neel, how about yourself?
Well, you guys know I'm more of a basketball and football guy, but I take appreciation with every sport. And, just like Dan said, alluding to his point about superstars driving the fever, my sports story has got to be Shohei Ohtani and what he's putting together with this 55 home run stolen base season that he's got going. Outside chance at 60-60. Not that I think he's going to get that, but based on what he just put together possibly the greatest game in history, at least regular season wise. 10 RBIs, 3 homers, 6 out of 6. A couple stolen bases, I believe, too. Or maybe not the bases on that game, but that might have been the greatest game ever. And it just goes to show that you give this guy the most massive contract in baseball history, I guess in sports history as well. And some people out there, including myself, were skeptical about, is he going to come through on the value? And so far, so good for the LA Dodgers and for Ohtani, because he has certainly done that. He has driven so much attention to baseball. And a couple things that stick out with this is that, on the other league. We got the most likely the AL MVP. We know Ohtani's going to get the NL MVP, but the AL MVP is going to be Aaron Judge, and Ohtani seems to even be dwarfing him in terms of the the broader attention to the sport, and that's kind of like because Aaron Judge in some ways is having just as good of a season. You look at both of these guys are in the mid 50s of homers. They're both on very high ranking teams. They both are unbelievable superstars with mega cachet when it comes to drawing fans in and attention. But Ohtani, he's got the record of this home runs plus stolen bases season. And Judge, meanwhile, people don't pay attention to his on-base percentage is approaching 500, which is prime Barry Bonds type stuff. And he's also leading in the home run race as well. So this, in that sense, it doesn't necessarily remind me of when Sammy Sosa and Maguire were going at it in that epic home run battle many years ago, because they were fighting for the same stat line and the same record. But these two are both putting together unbelievable seasons. It's just that Ohtani seems to be commanding so much more of the casual fan attention. He's obviously got the international fan attention with Japan and all the Asian countries as well. And the crazy thing I'll mention about this stat is that one looks at Ohtani and they wonder, how could this guy even get better? The most he's stolen bases he's ever stolen in his career has been 26 up to this point. So he's already more than doubled his previous highest stolen base season. And on top of that, he drops in the 50s in homers. And then you look at next year, is he going to be pitching on top of all this? I mean, this is insane. And so, just looking at all that, I and especially based on the last couple of weeks of what he's been doing, I settled on Shohei Ohtani for this answer.
It's definitely a solid answer. And Neel, from before the start of the season, it was determined that Ohtani was not going to pitch because of a UCL injury. And from what you know of this injury, I mean, doesn't that hamper a player's swing? And if it does, how many more home runs do you think he could have possibly hit?
That's a good question. I don't think it's limiting him, to be honest. The way that he
certainly isn't. I mean, he's got over 50 home runs. But
so I think could he have had could he have had a couple more if that is a factor of the injury itself? Perhaps, but I don't think we'll ever know. He seems to be swinging the bat just fine, with accuracy, with power, with finesse, all three, and it looks so effortless for him that I can't sit here and say that there is anything to be worried about as far as his, going out there feeling very comfortable every time he steps on up to bat.
Yeah, no, and 50 and 50. I remember vividly getting a sticker book and the cover was Jose Canseco, and he had just eclipsed the 40 and 40 with Oakland. And I mean, now Ohtani is doing this, plus he's been hit, plus he's a pitcher. I'm assuming that he is going to go pitch for next season. But I mean, the world's just at his fingertips. I mean, you're talking about Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt Jr. is having an incredible year. Does this elevate the profile of a team like the Kansas City Royals? Definitely a good call on that. And for me, I got to say, guys, that I was really captivated with the Olympics in general. I mean, it was just it was a long time coming for the Olympics to elevate its profile to what it once was. I guess Rio was the last true Olympics where fans were, Pyeongchang for the Winter Games, but in regards to a summer Olympics, it just because Tokyo was during COVID, and of course the Beijing Olympics as well. Not only that, I mean, Canada's sheer dominance, getting 27 medals. The men's relay team, 100 team led by Andre DeGrasse, getting gold. Along with the conspiracy the actual indictment of the Canadian women's team, soccer team, with the whole drone gate fiasco. And, you take that negative aside, and the emergence of Summer McIntosh being etched in just this lure of Canadian Olympic dominance. It was definitely an exciting year, for sure. I gotta say as well, and not just trying to add some time here, but there was something a lot more intriguing about the Mitch Marner story. I'm not saying that it was like 1A with the Olympics on my end, but I really thought something was going to happen. Which would have been just absolutely amazing to see, that Brad Treliving had the stones to trade Mitch Marner. I mean, preseason is just started. I'm gonna throw it to Tony and Dan. And Dan, you must have some thoughts to how everything has evolved over the last couple of months with Mitch and the Leafs.
The Leafs are the most frustrating team to be a fan of, because, of course, at the end of last season, what was everybody screaming? Like, it's time to blow this thing up. We've tried it for 7 years. We've tried it with this 4, with this 5, right? So something's got to give. You just signed Willie, so he's not going anywhere. You're not trading Austin. That's a given. Tavares, if you can get rid of him, sure, but he's got 1 year left and he wants to stay here. There's nothing wrong with him evolving his game into, a third line guy. It'd be a really good thing for the team to keep. So then the obvious one is obvious. We were all screaming the same thing, that the Marner, as much as he is a perennial 90 point, pushing on 100 point, 27-year-old winger who's one of the best in the world at what he does, just doesn't seem to, I don't know, fit.
Well, he like Matthews just doesn't get it done during the playoffs.
But nobody's screaming to get rid of Matthews. It's something about Marner's. It's whether it's his size or it's his cockiness or it's his attitude in the press or it's the way that he plays this game. Like, we know now that Willie didn't say, "Shoot the puck, bro." It's not fucking Junior. He said, "Shoot the puck, bro. Stop crying about it," on the bench. But when we thought he said, "It's not fucking Junior," we knew exactly what he was talking about, because Marner still plays like he's in junior. He plays this like he knows the cameras are watching him. And it's hard for me to describe, but he plays with more theater than Toronto sports fans want their heroes to play with, which is why, we can go down the list of great Leafs who this team doesn't revere because they weren't good old Canadian boys, right? To steal Don Cherry's line. And and a lot of that rings true. So we wanted him to go. They decided not to let him go. They changed the coach instead, and they did the same thing where they changed their bottom 6 just enough. They brought in some aging defensemen that are going to be, as soon as one of them gets hurt, it's going to be the biggest fucking topic in the city. And we're right back to where we started, right? Marner's back in the press, talking with his, like his shit doesn't stink, and trying to say the right things recently, but still rubbing people the wrong way. And we're going to go into a season now where it's Morgan Riley said it this summer too. It's cup or bust with this team, and it's gotten to that point where legitimately, I don't even know that they are a legitimate cup contender. If you look at them against the teams who have made it recently and the teams that are coming up and the Devils who have their ex-coach, and you got me going on a hockey thing now where I'm getting excited. Yeah. But I think we were all convinced that Marner was going to be traded. I don't know if I said it here or to somewhere else, but I don't trust this GM to do what needs to be done with a guy like Marner, because he screwed up I don't know if he screwed it up, but he lost Gaudreau and Tkachuk for nothing essentially, and that team that he left is awful now. So you worry about the same thing where this team, Calgary, was a good team for a few years there. They were pushing second, third round, right? So you guys are similar to what Toronto's doing now. And then if you take a star and don't parlay that asset into long-term success, you failed. So
I don't know. I don't. It's funny you say how Marner portrays himself a certain way in the media. Tony, I don't know if I've caught that from Mitch Marner. I mean, off the top, I mean, in terms of ego, in terms of attitude, I mean, I guess during the playoffs it was evident, but it was obvious. I mean, he didn't perform, and you have a spotlight on the guy. It's one thing, but I mean, I always thought that Mitch Marner carried himself quite well. I never thought his attitude was a problem. Tony, very quickly, what did you think about what Dan said there?
I disagree. Now, look, granted, we don't know these people personally, but his
Sure.
disposition seems to be very off-putting. There is the stigma of the relationship between his father and the organization as well. He's got a lot of say. It's kind of like the Eric Lindros thing going on there. But in terms of what should have been done in the offseason, first of all, be careful what you wish for. You know, this guy plays on your top penalty killing unit. He's your top power play guy. He's F1. Like in all situations, he's there and play. What happens in the playoffs? I don't know. I can't get in his mind. Perhaps the game is too tight for him because of his stature. He doesn't play a tough game. It's a different level, and he hasn't been able to figure it out. The Leafs had no leverage anyway. He's a free agent. He gets to pick and choose where he goes, essentially. I mean, if there was a trade on the table with, the Columbus Blue Jackets, let's say, you think he would have picked to go there? Let's say, I mean, God rest his soul, I'm saying this. Let's say there was an offer of Goudreau in a package prior to his passing. At the end of the day, it was in Mitch Marner's hands anyway. And I can see him and his father being the type of guy to say, fuck them, let's screw with them. We're going to be a free agent for the whole year. I'm going to play it out, and I'm going to get to pick and choose where I go. Those are factors as well. But just be careful what you wish for. He's a very, 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 very exceptionally talented hockey player who does a lot of good things on the ice. Some guys, it takes a while. Alex Ovechkin wasn't the greatest playoff performer in the early stages of his career, excuse me. But, he slowly but surely figured it out. But you're right, Dan. This team is at a crossroads now, and they're definitely going to have $11 million on the cap for sure with John Tavares next year. But the question is Mitch Marner? Is he worthy of Austin Matthews like pay at this point? You're going to get a raise. There's no way he's going to stay stagnant. How high do you go? How high do you go with this salary cap? Are you spinning your wheels? Are you going through the conveyor belt round and round and round? That's ultimately the question.
And it will be interesting to see as there is a new evolution with regards to the Leafs and all, the majority of Toronto teams, as the conglomerate that was Rogers and Bell. They have ended their joint partnership with MLSE. Rogers has bought Bell's 37.5% stake of MLSE. And now I believe it's a 75% share that they have of the organization. And, Dano, as we go on to say the business of sports here, I really am curious if there was any sort of back and forth and reluctance, if there was any stumbling blocks with these two major Canadian organizations owning the elite franchises of this country, of course, with the Raptors and the Leafs and Toronto FC, Argos. Is this going to improve the state of all of these teams with Rogers as principal owner?
Maybe, probably not. I'm sure it'll be just about the same. The common comparison, or the obvious comparison that most people were talking about after they bought out Bell was, they're going to ruin MLSE and their franchises like they did the Blue Jays, which I don't necessarily think is a fair comparison, because the Blue Jays are, on an island all to themselves in Major League Baseball, where they're the only Canadian team. A lot of, I'm sure attracting the best and brightest managers and scouts and everything else that goes into it is a challenge for the Blue Jays. But you can't deny that they spend the money. Year after year, they're always in talks to get the big fish. This year, whether or not it was true or not, apparently there was a plane with Antoniou on it that was coming to Toronto, and Toronto made every effort to sign the world's best baseball player. And they've proven that throughout the years. They've always gone after star pitchers or players. And this year is a bit of a letdown as far as the product on the field. But, they're going to pony up for Vladdy, and they've proven that they don't mind spending the money to build champions. So, with the Leafs and with the Raptors and Toronto FC, they're going to put some muscle behind it, and their muscle is their money. And there's only so much you can do in a cap sports, but I don't see it changing all that much. I'm sure that they're going to want to do something. They're going to push for a championship, especially in the first couple of years, to either justify it or to change their standings, or to try to change that narrative that especially people in Toronto have this distaste for Rogers just as a company. But honestly, I think it's going to be pretty much the same.
And I think that's that could very well be the case. It's funny you were saying how it's tough to lure free agents and top management to the Blue Jays, but I think the big problem is the fact that the Yankees and the Red Sox are in the same division. And I mean,
no, I think players love to play in the AL East. You can look at a guy like Marcus Semien as a really good example. Where he comes here, he has a prove me year in Toronto, and he signs for big bucks in Texas. And Toronto is,
but he didn't stay. He didn't stay
exactly because the market is just too small. It's good because it's Canada, it's Toronto, it's not Texas, it's not New York, it's not LA, it's not Chicago. Even Bellinger was supposed to. He was a name that they apparently went after pretty hard this summer, but he chose Chicago just because American kids are going to want to play in the biggest American cities. Whether or not the tax implications of whatever state they're in, we can talk about that too, because we tax at a pretty large rate up here. I've heard contrasting reports that it doesn't make as big a deal as some people think, and some people think it is the biggest deal to these players. So it's baseball specifically, it is an issue. I don't know if there's any denying that.
Perhaps there is some. I mean, obviously Marcus, but I'm saying like Marcus Semien, like how many teams was actually able going to pony up for that kind of contract? I can't remember off the top of my head, but between him and Corey Seager, it was $500 million their contract. So if it was over $300 million for Marcus Semien, I mean, I don't even know if the Yankees themselves were able to afford that. I don't think they would have, because he's not with the Yankees. But anyway, that's another story. And I mean, Tony, I don't know if it's really easy to say if one team has a lot more pressure to succeed with this changing of the ownership, for lack of a better term. Obviously, the main spotlight is on Toronto. Maybe it is cut and dry in your eyes, but between all the teams in MLSE, who has the most pressure to get things going? I guess from an individual standpoint, when it comes to management, when it comes to players, is it really that obvious which team within the players and the organization, the management themselves, has the most pressure?
Well, if you're polling Tony Antoniou and Dino Iradatu, who are season ticket holders to Toronto FC, they're gonna, with bias, say that all the pressure should be on Toronto FC to get better. We've been watching a giant steaming hot pile of cow shit for the last 4 years from that club. So, but in the reality world, it's the Leafs, and it is cut and dry because the 1967, it's a hockey town, and this team is good, right? right? I mean, they're perennial playoff. They make perennial playoff appearances, but their appearances within those playoffs are always questionable, obviously. But yeah, I do think it's pretty cut and dry. Where I think it might be interesting moving forward when this thing is official and takes over is to see what happens to guys like Brendan Shanahan or a Masai Ujiri. Does this change their status with the teams? You're always going to start with the presidents. You're going to look at those jobs. I mean, Shanahan seems to be riding some serious luck being on that job as long as he has been, with the complete lack of success by the team. So I'm going to keep an eye on that because I don't know. And obviously, with Keith Pelly calling the shots now too, he's getting settled into the job. What's he going to say? What's he thinking? What kind of changes is he going to want to make? So those are the things I'm more interested in and keen to see what happens.
Mm. You know, Neil, the first thing that popped into my head is because there is a stipulation for the National Football League to have a principal owner. And now with this changeover, that face is Edward Rogers. I mean, I remember seeing Edward as the Raptors collected that championship, and he looks like he did not look very comfortable being in that spotlight. I don't think he's going to be Jerry Jones 2.0 is what my point is. But, you know, with regards to what the NFL require in a franchise, I mean, I don't know if expansion is truly on the table. Could they go to 36, 34 teams? Is this renew any optimism you may have for Toronto getting an NFL franchise?
The easy answer or the quick answer is yes, it does. And I'm not saying that there's a good chance, but I'm saying that there's a much higher chance. So even if that is from extremely low to just low, that's still a sizable increase in the chances that this could happen. And there's a number of reasons for that. The first thing, just talking on the NFL side, is that they are making it extremely clear that their next step after completely dominating the American market is to go international. That's the untapped wells of fandom oil, you could say, that are still out there. And the NFL, just based off how they've catapulted into the top spot, never to be overtaken probably in our lifetimes in America, they certainly have set their sights on how they can continue to exponentially raise their pocket width, and that's going international. So that's one thing. And even Goodell said he wants to play more and more international games. I think he said he wants to play 16 regular season games a year, where every team has to play in one international game a year. I mean, that's a huge endeavor. So it just goes to show that international is where they're aiming for right now, because there's nothing to prove in America. They've already really reached almost to the heights that they can achieve. You know, they've dominated. Then the other side is on the Rogers side, where now, like you said, they have a principal owner. That means that Edward Rogers really has all the voting power in any sort of decision that's to be made. Rogers is known to have interest in the NFL and less interest in the CFL, even though MLSE owns the Argonauts. And with this sort of mega conglomerate that is there in MLSE, and now with a principal owner, if the NFL was looking at destinations with all the checks ticked off as to what they would need for stability, financial growth, community endeavors, high-level facilities for the players and whatnot, the MLSE would check all of these boxes. That would reduce the risk for the NFL, both business and product-wise. And again, the NFL only needs to look at the Raptors to show what a lone non-American team in an American sport can achieve. And the Raptors have done a fantastic job in what they've done so far. I think the biggest question, to be honest, is if Toronto, and more than Toronto, Canadian fans are going to be as gung-ho about the NFL. And that will be a question that the NFL will probably struggle with if they ever do give us consideration. I will also point this out, that Rogers now is the only conglomerate on the planet that has an NBA, NHL, MLS, and
NBA.
MLB team because they solely own the Jays.
Oh,
So
right,
now you bring in those other three. So if they were to add on the NFL into there, they'd be the first sports company to own all five of those. And I think that's something that probably Edward Rogers is looking at going, that would be quite a legacy if I could achieve that.
Do the Blue
Can I
Jays get
interject
swallowed
for a
up into
second?
MLS?
Huh?
Do the Blue Jays get swallowed up into MLSE, or do they remain their own?
No, they'll probably be a separate entity because they're solely controlled by the Rogers. But Rogers controls
Can I
MLS.
interject here? Can I step
Tony,
in
go
here
for
one
it.
second? Sorry to interrupt, just to add to Neel. Everything you said was beautiful. There's one thing you left out. Without a stadium, a brand new stadium, there's no chance the NFL is coming to Toronto. They've got to pony up for at least $1 billion stadium. And that's, I'm saying,
in Canadian
without a new
currency,
stadium,
you're probably
but I
looking
think-
no
at
chance.
If you're looking at the NFL and whatever it would take to build a stadium, you already know from the trajectory that this product has been on. You know that what they're trying to do internationally, and now you have this company where Rogers really controls all the voting on all of this. I think they're looking long term with this deal. They can't be looking short term. This is a long term vision, and I think if in the next few years or even 4 or 5 years they were faced with this decision of building a brand new stadium, they would find a way.
Yeah, they'll find a way. They'll have to pony up. They'll have to pony up quite a bit because this thing will get political in a hurry if they're expecting taxpayers to pony up for a stadium, essentially where a team is playing 9 games a year. Right.
And
But
to Tony's point.
that,
Sorry, Tony. If you weren't.
no, I'm just saying that's the key to
finisher.
everything. Is it feasible to build a brand new stadium?
I'm going to say the answer is no, because beyond the 9 home games and maybe you got 1 or 2 preseason games if Toronto's NFL team goes to the playoffs, there's a lot of weeks into the year that are left outstanding. And yeah, maybe the next time Taylor Swift has a concert and she does 7 shows, maybe she could do it in Toronto's new stadium. But here's my scenario for you boys. MLSE doesn't really have, or this sports conglomerate does not really have to stick around in Toronto. You have a football-ish stadium in Vancouver. I mean, for like Edmonton is of course bigger, but from what I see on television with regards to BC Place, which I think holds 50,000 for CFL. Now that'll increase with an NFL field. And you tidy that place up a little bit. You have a rivalry with Seattle and however far the rest of the like California is and so on. I don't think Toronto has the infrastructure to have a 70,000 seat stadium. You already have something there in Vancouver. Why not go there?
I think that looking at Vancouver, they don't got the fan base that would support it like Toronto does.
How do you know?
First of all, well, the case in point, look at the Vancouver Grizzlies. What happened to them? They did not survive.
Completely different scenario.
Okay, it's a different
Completely
scenario, but I will say this also is that
Need a brand new stadium too, by the way.
Toronto is by far the most American-esque city in Canada. We share so
Based
much
on what?
more. Oh, based on my observations of our culture. Yeah, I can't give you
It's the biggest market in
objective
Canada.
there. But, sorry.
It's the biggest market in Canada, sure.
If the NFL is going to go international, they're going to go to the biggest market. I mean, Vancouver is a nice city, but not to mention that they would need a brand new. There's not a suitable stadium in Canada to house an NFL franchise. Not for what they're demanding, not for what the NFL expects their stadium to look like. There are exceptions. I mean, they renovate the shit out of Lambeau Field every year to try and keep up to the standards. I mean, there are certain places, even Buffalo, they're finally getting a new stadium. It took forever. But there's not a suitable stadium in Canada right now to house the National Football League. And it's one of the reasons why we only got 2 cities hosting the World Cup. Just we didn't have sufficient facilities, and it was one of the factors as well. But if it's going to come to Canada, it's going to come to Toronto.
But you're talking about it's going into Canada's largest market. But I mean, Los Angeles didn't have football for 20 years. There's number one. Number two, and I think you two can, Dan and Tony can argue with the best of them that BMO Field is a World Cup level facility. I mean, maybe it will be when they do the renos, but it's going to be on a temporary basis. I mean, from my vantage, when I saw the World Cup in Germany, Brazil may be a terrible example because they spent way too much money on that World Cup, let alone the Olympics, when they could have used that money for more important, projects like, I don't know, their own people. But I think that with regards to Toronto, like Tony, I'm completely 100% with you. Toronto does not have a facility, and Canada does not have a facility sufficient enough for the NFL. But I mean, with regards to, I think it was what Neel said about Toronto being the most American-esque market. Something tells me there's a lot of American influence in Vancouver as well. Neel has returned. I mean, Neel, I think that there is a lot of American influence with Vancouver. I mean, I don't think they really gravitate towards the BC Lions. And I mean, with the Grizzlies, I think a lot of people, and I think even yourself, can attest that Vancouver really got screwed out of their basketball team. I mean, I think that if they actually had ownership who had a heart set in making it work in Vancouver, I mean, I think the most wins they had in a season was 33. I mean, that's significantly under 500.
Yep. So, well, to that point, I mean, Rogers and MLSE, they have proven themselves to be capable, stable owners that are willing to spend at times when they have contention windows, and sometimes spend a lot. Like, I mean, so I think the stability of ownership, and I do disagree a little bit that I do think that the infrastructure of Toronto could support an NFL-sized stadium without really a problem, because there's so much of an encatchment area in the Greater Toronto area that, I mean, you're looking at such a sizable population. You look at some of these small markets in the NFL, like in Carolina and even Kansas City. These places sell out every single game. The NFL sells out, and there's high demand for tickets. Teams
very quickly. Sorry to interrupt, Neel. Where would you put that stadium?
So that is
put you on the spot.
That's one of the biggest questions of all. But it would have to be somewhere where a lot of the highways sort of intersect or have easy access to. I don't think it would be within downtown Toronto or anything like that. It would probably be somewhere where there's a larger open space where people can easily access by the highways and whatnot. But and then they would have a lot of room for on-site facilities, like some of the NFL stadiums do. In fact, they have sort of the stadiums are a little more remote, sometimes not even in the actual city that they represent, but just on the outskirts kind of thing. It does happen, and I think that would probably be the case for us if that was to happen. But I couldn't tell you exactly what.
No, I don't think anybody really could. And maybe east of Oshawa, is there enough space in Guelph? I mean, obviously, you need a big chunk of land.
No, it'd have to be close to
Milton. What about Milton, Randy?
Milton.
Yeah, you'd love it
Milton,
there.
do you know how? Oh, there is so much space that has been swallowed up with homes. No, I don't know about Milton. I mean, maybe Cambridge, but actually, that's west of Guelph. But I think it's a pipe dream. I think the four of us do see it as a pipe dream. But where would Toronto put their NFL stadium?
Yeah, I personally think that if the NFL was going to expand and put 2 international teams, Toronto's got to be one of the leading runners for all the boxes being checked off. Close proximity as far as travel time for the teams when they play away games, home games, and a proven track record of success with major North American sports franchises. So we'd have to be at the top of the list. Even if we weren't to get one, we'd be highly considered if we showed the interest. Which now I think with Rogers holding all the cards basically, is certainly something that they're interested in. And I think just to speak about Tenenbaum and this whole deal that came down, Larry Tenenbaum, fantastic owner, I would say, all in all. His days are numbered in MLSE. He still owns, I think, a fifth of the corporation. He's probably gonna sell his shares by this time next year, is my guess.
Yeah, perhaps. He definitely is a legend within the Toronto sports scene. Hey, speaking of legends, the number 15 has been will officially be retired on the, I believe, 2nd of November. Vince Carter will have his number 15 hung to the rafters at Scotiabank Arena, and it was Neel Katarey himself who brought this to my attention because he said, "Oh, Vince is going to get his number retired." I was like, "Yeah, I know. Brooklyn's retiring number 15," and I had to reconfirm it's actually for the Raptors. And Neel, your thoughts? Vince's 15 is going up to the ceiling. Oh, you're on mute there, Neel.
Yeah, my thoughts are this is a deserved honor. And I hesitate. I don't say well deserved, but I do say deserved because he does deserve it. It's just not a perfect scenario. Obviously, the things that I would say is how he earned it is that he really catapulted the Raptors. He put us on the map. He, more than just the NBA, he inspired a whole generation of Canadian kids, and his fingerprints were all over our Canadian men's national team that just played in the Olympics. Many of those young men are idolizing Vince at a very young age with their dads, watching those epic Philly rivalry series and dunk contests and all that stuff burned into their memory forever. Is Vince Carter, and he meant a lot to this city. He was the most successful international star at one point, and he was on our team. I remember we all felt proud about that. And so, even though the latter segment of his Toronto tenure was disarray and somewhat negative, the positives don't just get thrown away because of that. And on top of that, once he left Toronto, he continued to have a great career and ultimately became one of those respected veterans around the league that was humble about what he does, accepted his role, certainly earned his Hall of Fame 2B status. So, now that Toronto.
Neel had
Something.
there we go.
Oh, did we miss a bunch of that?
No, yeah, just a couple of seconds there.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, just like in life, when you go through something in the moment, there's always the pros and the cons, and sometimes it seems like the cons outweigh the pros. But many years down the line, when you think back to that time in your life, we tend to think of the positives, and that's what happened with Vince Carter. That's what Toronto has slowly led to him being embraced here again, and appreciating him for the things that he did do for this franchise, and that's why I say he's deserving of this honor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that the announcement came, Tony. We've definitely chatted a number of times on Vince Carter's legacy with the Raptors, and not to go through that rabbit hole again, but obviously there was a big to do on the timing of this announcement. Brooklyn, the Nets, they announced Vince's jersey number retirement beforehand, and I mean, it was 2004 when Vince left Toronto, and there was a number of years. I guess it was the 20-year anniversary when Vince started to get some applause and recognition. It wasn't as frosty as it was in the first, say, 10, 12 years when he came in as a visitor. I think it is safe to say that the majority of fans have forgiven him, especially those who attended games when Vince was on the visiting team. But I mean, obviously, when you're thinking about 2004 to today, I mean, 20 years have passed since Vince donned a Toronto jersey. Should this have happened sooner? And should number 15 have been retired long before?
Well, I don't know how much sooner it could have happened. The guy was still playing up to 2 years ago. So his career just ended, didn't it?
Yeah, it
You know
was.
what?
Well, his career ended during when they shut it down for COVID,
Yeah, there you go.
2020.
I don't know. I think I'm okay with the timing. I'm still a believer that Kyle Lowry should have went up first, but I understand why they're doing this as well. I mean, it's you let bygones be bygones, and I'm totally on board with it. I'm not going to poop on this. I watched Yarmer Yager's number retirement in Pittsburgh last year, and it turned out to be pretty damn cool. And he left under the same circumstances where he demanded a trade and wanted out of Pittsburgh, and it left a bad taste. Not to mention when he came back to the NHL, he picked the Flyers over the Penguins, which really pissed off Penguin fans at the time. But he came back, his number was retired, and it was a beautiful ceremony. It was really awesome. And like Neel says, you remember those days, you remember the good times. You remember Toronto was on the map. I mean, just our athlete, our star basketball player was leading the headlines on ESPN Sports Center, which meant something back then. It means absolutely jack shit now, but it meant something back then. It was so cool to watch. So I'm okay with it. I mean, like I said, I would have liked to see Kyle go up first. I think he was a little more deserving of it. His loyalty to the organization was obviously stronger. However, Vince Carter captivated the city. Kyle Lowry didn't captivate it like Vince did. He was just a special player, right? And we're here. It's going to be nice. I mean, the Raptors need these kinds of nights to overcome the fact that they're going to be a shit team again, more than likely. So they need nights like this where they can get fans into the seats and reason to show up to games.
He did captivate the city, absolutely. And Dan does actually have to get going, but before you do, Dano, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. Not only, I did want to piggyback and get your thoughts on if Kyle Lowry's number 7 should have been retired first. I guess Lowry is still playing as well. But, you think of Chris Bosh, who was long retired. But, with regards to whether or not Vince's number should have been retired first, should it have been retired at all? Reason why I asked is I was listening to TSN Overdrive here in Toronto, and there was a lot of negativity towards this announcement and this practice that Vince's 15 is going to be retired. Where do you stand on not only Vince's number being retired, but his number being retired first?
Yeah, as far as the first thing, Tony's right. It's really just a time thing, right? He's done playing. Lowry's still playing, and I don't know that Bosh meant as much to the city as Carter did. There's not much more to add than what Neel and Tony already said. Vince was the guy for a long stretch, and some really meaningful, impactful statement moments that were so amazing to see done in a Toronto jersey. The slam dunk contest is obviously the one that comes to everybody's mind, but even that playoff series against Philly where, they lost right at the buzzer in Game 7, that was a moment in Toronto Raptors history that was very meaningful to maybe not to the league, outside of Vince's flashiness and his ability to do things that nobody was doing before, but it meant a shit ton to a young fan base in Toronto where, there's a lot of years where, you can gauge how popular a team is or how well it's doing based on, jersey sales and the number of, the automatic reaction people have to who their guy is at any given moment. And there was no denying that, Vinsanity was real in this city. And, his jersey being retired is deserved. And I got no issue with it being the first one, because again, there's going to be other players who are going to get that distinction and deserve it. So, but it's just is what it is. He's come and gone and retired, and it's the right thing to do, and I'm happy that they're doing it.
Yeah. So, Dano, thank you so much for joining us. Must be a busy week for you. Always great to chat with you. Hope you and yours are doing well, and we'll definitely follow up next year if you are able to repeat as fantasy baseball champion.
Thank you for getting that last plug in. If anybody needs any fantasy help, we can reach out. Let me know. Let you know how to set that second lineup. All right, boys. Nice to see everybody. Talk soon.
Take care, Dan.
Good night.
Dano, be good. All right. Neel, as Tony was talking about Lowry's number being retired first, very quickly, do you think that would have flown, especially within NBA circle? Because if you had to choose between Brooklyn announcing the jersey retirement first or the Raptors waiting until Kyle Lowry retires to retire number 7, I mean, I think the more criticism, especially within the NBA, is Vince not having 15 retired. I mean, if you ask me, Brooklyn has nothing going for them, and they just wanted to get something, in a positive sense, stick it to the Raptors. I mean, it seemed like a must win, if you want to call it that. But what do you think, Neel?
My thoughts are that either way it happened, the most important person in this would be Kyle Lowry as far as this decision, and he wouldn't have cared. And the reason I say that is because it's well known that Lowry has a great reverence for Vince Carter. He sees him as a veteran leader, as sort of a big brother type figure, and they've always been amicable, appreciative of each other. And Lowry has certainly, I think, been appreciative of the legacy that Vince Carter started in Toronto as far as elevating the franchise that he ultimately took over. So if you ask me, if Lowry is the second person that goes up, at least he knows what to expect from a retirement ceremony. But he could also look up there and say, whatever number was there before, mine's more important. And everyone in that stadium is going to know that as well. But at the same time, the first one that goes up there does not have to be the best one, with everyone after that being less important. The first one can be the first major important guy that we had, and then we can retire the all-time Raptor GOAT. In no particular order, these guys are all deserving. Both these two, DeMar, and then the arguments start after that about who's deserving and who isn't. But those three guys, 100% in any given order. I don't think Toronto fans are going to care too much. But by far, Lowry would be the most important. Yes, I will say that.
The most important. Yeah, that's an interesting question for when Kyle's number 7 gets retired, which definitely will happen when he hangs up the cleats. Mm-hmm. I did want to bring it to NFL, guys. You guys are big Buffalo Bills fans. They're not doing too bad. I mean, they're just 3-0, and they took out their division rivals, the Miami Dolphins. Absolutely waxed Jacksonville. Tony, are we getting excited?
Oh no, you don't get excited. I mean, first of all, it's way too early. Here's what excites me, though. I'll tell you what excites me. I love the way the offense is running. They had a tough offseason. They traded a first-round pick again to the Kansas City Chiefs again, and the last time that happened, Kansas City drafted some dude by the name of Patrick Mahomes. So it didn't get off to a great start. They lost some, legends of the franchise, leaders, Jordan Poyer. They lost Micah Hyde, very important players as defensive back. So it was a rocky beginning to the offseason. But I think the fortunes of this team changed when they changed the offensive coordinator last year in November. They were at a 5-5 mark. They made the necessary changes, and they kind of more running, more spreading the ball around to various receivers, which ultimately led to the easy decision of trading Stephon Diggs in the offseason, which again wasn't received well by a lot of Bills fans. Me personally, I had no problem with it. I thought it was the right time and it was the right move to make because I think it just lifted a giant gorilla off of Josh Allen's back, right? It's just that distraction wasn't there. The pressure to always find him, uh, is gone. And look at last night's game. There's 6 different guys scored touchdowns in that game last night. So it's good. It's encouraging, of course. Now, having said that, I look at the Buffalo Bills very similar to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know who they are. We know what they are. We know they're going to get to the playoffs. Can they overcome that hump that is the Kansas City Chiefs? Like Ric Flair says, to beat a man, you got to beat the man. They've had opportunities to beat the man. They had a couple of solid opportunities to beat the man, but they found a way to lose. Is it, and I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. Is it just bad coaching decisions from a defensive perspective at the end of the game? Or is it just that Patrick Mahomes is that good? I think there's a little bit of truth to everything. But until the Bills get over that hump, we know what they are. They're the Toronto Maple Leafs of the National Football League right now. But
I don't know
man,
about
I love
that.
Josh
Wow.
Allen. I love him. I love Josh Allen. I love him so much. He's such a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal player. I'm serious. They had that player poll before the season started, and they had him as the most overrated player in the National Football League. It was mind numbing. It was he might be
You
the
don't
best player in
think it's
football.
sour grapes? Sorry, Tony. You don't think it was
Course,
sour grapes?
of course
Sure.
it's jealous players saying stupid shit, but the fact that they would even say that is insane to me.
Yeah.
He might be the best player in football right now. As we sit here right now, he might be the best. I mean, he's the second best quarterback in the National Football League right now, hands down. You can't take it out of Patrick Mahomes' hands yet, but they have to. Come January, come February, they're going to have to find a way to do it. And I assume you agree with me 100% on that, Neel.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I am excited, and I know that it's early in the season, 3-0, first 3 games, still too early. Anything can happen. Injuries can happen, derailing a whole season. But ever since we made Joe Brady our offensive coordinator halfway through last season, our offense has been looking fantastic for the most part. Josh Allen looks like he's well on his way to winning an MVP this year. And, sometimes there's teams that are out there that you're so good for so long, but eventually you do get over that hump. And the fact that what I see out of this Bills team that I did not see last year is that there's this like lightness about them. The team chemistry seems to have never been better. You got all of the power in Josh Allen's hands now on offense. There's no more Stephon Diggs. There's no more divas causing locker room bullshit. Now you draft a really nice wide receiver, Keon Coleman, who can at least replicate some of the stuff that they had lost with Diggs and Gabe Davis. But you also just got all these other guys like Khalil Shakir. James Cook has definitely taken a step up this year. He's looking like an elite multifaceted running back in the NFL. The only thing he doesn't do well is run for touchdowns. But you got other guys that can maybe carry that a little bit more, and you got Josh Allen. So all in all, health permitting, also our defense, we've had so many injuries, but we have a fantastic all-time legendary leader in Von Miller who seems to be completely taking that by the throat, that leadership role, and running with it this year.
Load management. They got Von Miller on load management right now. He
Yeah,
comes
and
in
I'm telling you,
situations and
this looks
he's
like
got a couple of sacks already. But
absolutely
throw him in there for third. Yeah, it's for sure it's exciting. Now we'll see how the defense holds up. There's something about the way they play at the end of games against Kansas City that scare the shit out of me. Now, obviously, Patrick Mahomes has a lot to do with that, but it's what do you do? Do you try and keep him contained? Do you play man? Do you have two guys high? Do you stay off the sidelines? I guess the key is make sure you have a good enough lead at the end of the game where when the ball does go into his hands at the end of the game, he needs 2 scores and not 1.
Yeah, we can't just beat Kansas City by like 2-3 points. We have to beat them by 10 to 14 points to really show that to really feel confident about winning the Super Bowl. But all in all, everything seems to be clicking very nicely, despite the fact that we have a lot of injuries on defense. Hopefully that'll get a little bit healthier. Hopefully we'll stay healthy, and hopefully this is the year, man. Hopefully.
Now, keep in mind their
Yes.
next three games are on the road. They got Baltimore on Sunday night. They got Stephon Diggs and the Houston Texans the week after, and then a Monday nighter against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. So
Yeah.
let's
So
pump the
this was a
brakes.
good appetizer,
Relax,
but get
bro.
ready for the entree, is what Tony's saying. Because in 3 weeks, the next time we run one of these pods, I just hope me and Tony got the same giddiness that we do today.
Right. Exactly.
I think you're on mute, Randy.
Thank you. Man, I thought I was going to go an entire show without doing that. But what I was asking was how long is their window? I mean, how many seasons do you guys think that Buffalo has in order so for them to go on this kind of run? I mean, it was this year, last year, maybe the season before where they were you know, threatening to be in the Super Bowl. Now, I'm sorry. I'm going to give him a pass when it comes to DeMar Hamlin. Now, I will preface by saying that I am not a football guy like to the degree of you two, but I think that really railroaded him for the season, just with the emotional aspect of it all. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure. He,
but
he got an interception last night. Did you see that?
no, I mean,
He got
hey, and
yeah, he got an
he
interception
is
last night.
starting
It
now,
was a
right?
really special moment. So yeah, he's a
Yeah.
starter now,
Good.
and he got an INT last night. It was a special moment, and very, very happy for him. Sorry, to
I was
answer your
at
question,
Dick's.
as long as
Yeah, please.
as long as as long as Josh Allen is healthy and playing at that level, their window is open.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
And he's sort of just entering his prime now. So he's got at least 5 to 6 more years of prime Josh Allen left, where he's still going to be the athlete he is today, but he'll continue to get better because he had a lot of room to grow when it comes to football IQ. And I don't think he's reached his potential there yet. He's at his athletic peak, you may say, and he'll keep that for a few more years, but he still has room to grow with his football IQ. And through the first 3 games of this season, we're seeing that growth already. Is that you don't need to surround him with superstars. You just need to surround him with pieces.
So
There was a couple of
I want to
instances. Sorry, I
please,
just want to
sir.
say quickly. There was a couple of instances, and we'll stop sucking his ass. There was a couple of instances last night where he actually did the early slide. He didn't try and push for an extra yard or two and sacrifice his body, which was very encouraging to see. And that just shows you the maturity level he's at now. Not to mention that trusting the fact that, hey, third and short, we'll get this no problem. I've got a million weapons in front of me. I got the tight end in front. I can go wherever the hell I want, and we're going to get this first down. Let me just take a nice early slide, relax, take it easy. Once again, relax, bro. But that's enough, Josh.
No, what I did want to end things on with regards to football is, uh, well, for both of you, when was the last time you were at a Bills game? And
I was
because
at
the
a
reason why
Bills
I
game.
asked this, and the reason why I asked this is because, I mean, obviously it's been 25 years since the Leafs played at Maple Leaf Gardens, but I just miss that history so much. And as somebody who's not as passionate a Bills fan as you two are, I mean, Rich Stadium, New Era Field, Highmark, Ralph Wilson, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that history and that barn just, it was it's one of the great sporting experiences, honestly, really and truly. I mean, I love that kind of that park. Uh, Neel, you were about to chime in. When was the last time you were there, and are you happy for the new stadium uh, that the Bills are going to get into?
Yeah, I think I've been to about 4 or 5 Bills games in my life. And the last one was 2 seasons ago. It was actually December against Aaron Rodgers' Packers.
Hmm.
And we waxed the floor with them. It's always been an unbelievable experience just going to football games. It's like an event like no other, as far as even just going to basketball games. It's something about football that, the crowds, the tailgating, the sheer size of the stadium, it's sort of like the Roman gladiator sort of vibe to it.
Sure.
And you just don't get that with other sports, and it's really enjoyable. The fact that football games happen very infrequently compared to other sports as well heightens the importance of each game, of each experience as well, in my opinion, and is another reason why football is the king of sports today.
My last
Tony?
game was about my last game was about 6 years ago. I think it was Josh's rookie season. This was when he finally got in, and I forget who they were playing. It was in December. The weather was really nice actually, and that was the first time my
Hmm.
fiance had been to a game too. But she wasn't really into football before she met me, and she freaking loved it. Like she can't wait to go back. Just timing. It's actually really expensive now to go to Bills games
Oh my
as
God.
opposed to what it was 5, 6 years ago. But yeah, it really stayed with her. I couldn't believe how much she started falling in love with football after just being a part of it live. I've probably been to about a dozen Bills games in my times, but I went to a lot of them during the '90s teams, the early '90s, the Super Bowl appearance teams. I was at the coldest game in Buffalo Bills history against the Raiders. That was cool, literally. But yeah, it's a fabulous atmosphere.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think in the end, obviously, the Bills fans are going to enjoy the new stadium, but I'm sure a lot of them are going to be sad to see the old place go. So, guys, why don't we jump over to our final segment of the evening? It is called Straight Facts or Bro Relax, and Tony, obviously. Tua Tagovailoa was supposed to be a real leader for the Miami Dolphins. He did suffer yet another concussion. I believe it was against Buffalo. And hey, how many major injuries has this guy had in his very short career? However, something does say that he has no desire to hang him up. And I think that it will be even as early as this season, maybe towards the end of the season, especially if Miami is contending for a playoff spot, that Tua is going to make a return. Uh, Tua Tagovailoa, and I know I'm butchering his last name, will return before the end of the season. Tony, straight facts, bro, relax.
Unfortunately, straight facts. I mean, 3 concussions in such a short time span. You know, you want to see him settle down, relax. Again, I keep bringing up Penguin references. I apologize, but the time Sidney Crosby took, the time Sid took back in 2010, 2011 to allow himself, just to figure things out, the proper healing techniques, what he needs to do, figuring out there was a problem with his neck. I'm not a doctor, but I'll play one on this podcast for a little bit. My suggestion would be to take the year off, but football players are football players, man. They're a different breed. And I mean, look, the Miami Dolphins, as long as he's out, they don't have a chance at a playoff. I just don't think they do. I don't think they have enough in terms of the backup position to carry them through, but he'll be back. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he'll be.
And it's going to be unfortunate to see. So, Neel, obviously, we took a good chunk of time talking about the Toronto Raptors retiring the jersey number 15 of Vince Carter, and a number of key number of notable names made their way to Toronto, whether it be for an extended period of time or a cup of coffee. Cup of coffee being someone like Sean Marion, for example. It would have been nice to see him do a long run with Toronto. But between Damon Stoudemire, Marcus Camby, Chris Bosh, especially, even DeMar DeRozan, I mean, how many Toronto Raptors before the championship season will have their number retired by the team?
Well, it's funny,
Vince
Randy.
Carter. Well, sorry. What I was going to say, Vince Carter being the only Raptor from the pre-championship era to have his number retired.
Yeah,
Straight
well,
back
it's
to
funny
bro
how you
relax.
said. It's funny how you said, "Oh, that's bro relax." That's the big time bro relax because the way you even phrased that last sentence, you said, and even DeMar DeRozan's the only one that is a lock to have his jersey retired from the pre-championship era. There's no other player that's deserving, in my opinion, and that includes Chris Bosh, who would be the only one could potentially make an argument for. But none of these other guys, there's no Damon Stoudemire, Marcus Camby, there's no Tracy McGrady, Jalen Rose. None of these guys have done squat when it comes to cachet, when it comes to being or deified in the sports landscape of Toronto. DeRozan is the only one that will 100% get it and 100% deserves it, because let's just look at Vince. Vince was the ascension. What he brought to Toronto was the ascension. What DeMar brought was the loyalty, the undying loyalty that he didn't want to leave. We were the ones that played that card. And he also performed. Yes, he had his flameouts in the playoffs. Yes. He says that if LeBron wasn't in our conference, we would have won a championship with me too. Look, you could say that, but I don't know. But he is with the loyalty. And then you get to Lowry, and he was the champion, and that's why he's going up there, because he would have gone up there anyways, but he can call himself that when he goes up there. And if you want to talk about, does Kawhi deserve his number retired? Me personally, I wouldn't be mad at it at all. But I'm sort of neutral. I'm on the fence. If they give it to him, I'd be fine with it, because that was one of the greatest years of my sporting life, and one of the best playoff runs that I've ever been witness to, and may never have the same because of how life changes and things like that. But yeah, DeRozan would be the one from the pre-championship era, my friend.
I totally get that for sure. In terms of Kawhi, if Toronto, let's say, finds the secret sauce again and continues to hit Eastern Conference finals, maybe make an appearance, maybe win another championship, I think Kawhi's time in Toronto will be less is less, quote unquote, significant. I mean, to the degree of, let's say it was this flash in the pan, everything worked, and Toronto doesn't win a championship for the next 50 plus years, the Raptors at least. I think it's a different story. But I mean, if they actually get something going and actually have a program like they did the previous 10 years, no, I don't see Kawhi being considered. You can't retire. I know we all know Kawhi's uh, footprint in that year in Toronto. You can't retire a jersey number if you only played one season.
Well, you
I
can.
know it's happened
There's
before.
no
Well,
rule
of course
saying
you
you
can,
can.
and
But
it has happened.
I do agree with you with the fact that if only if we don't win another championship, and if things go prolonged as far as we're in limbo or we're not very good or something, then it's a consideration. But it's not going to happen immediately. That's one that they're going to really wait on. They're going to really test the waters. They're going to wait to see if that legacy endures. And if it does, maybe they'll consider it. But I can tell you this: that will be the shortest retirement speech you will ever hear in your life.
Perhaps, perhaps. I don't know, Tony.
Shorter than
Any
Joe
final
Pesci's.
comment?
No,
Oh,
I agree.
what did he say again with his
I
Oscar?
said
I am not worthy
thank
or
you, I
something?
appreciate it, or something like that. It's just basically thank you, I appreciate it, and that was it. You know what would be interesting with Kawhi, instead of retiring the number, maybe a statue outside the arena with him in the shot position. You know, the game winner in Game 7 against Philly. Maybe something like that to honor him would be an idea. They figured it out to just have him, or maybe have just that whole circle, like where he started and where he ended up. when he returned to Toronto the year after, that's what they did. They turned the lights off and they had a
Yep.
light show that
Yep.
followed his path all the way there. Were you at the game or?
No, I
or
caught
I
it on
guess you
TV.
saw it on TV, but seeing it live was really
Yeah.
cool. So maybe if they
I
figure out to
bet.
do something like that, statue formation, that could suffice. I would have a tough time with his number going up, but I don't know. I don't know. It was a phenomenal year, though.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
that was one of the top 5 individual playoff runs in NBA history, right there. And you know, Dirk Nowitzki 10 years prior or 8 years prior was also a top
Sure.
5 one. You probably got
Sure.
one or two Michael Jordan ones in there, you know, maybe, you know, but I know that he was peak Jordan essentially during that run.
Well, you know, from a hockey's perspective, Tony, I think will agree. Jean-Sébastien Giguère for the Anaheim Ducks. What was that? 2004. He lost to the New Jersey Devils. I mean, that was an epic run to the
Yeah, it was
Cup
03,
final. 03.
It was,
And
03.
yeah, I think Tampa won. I think Tampa won in 04. But yeah, no, I mean, hey, it was definitely up there for sure.
Didn't Jaguar
That
play the most like overtimes in like playoff history during that run? Like I just remember watching that and there being constant double and triple overtime games with those Anaheim teams. And
I
Jaguar
don't know
was
if it was
just
the
I
most.
know.
I don't know if it was the most because I think the '93 Habs team won
That's
like 10
exactly who I
overtime
thought.
games.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
I
exactly
think they
who I
won
was
like
thinking.
10 or
Yeah.
11 overtime games on their Stanley Cup run. But yeah, there was a lot. He played a lot of games, and then eventually he won the Stanley Cup, which was cool. I think Ron
Yeah.
Hextall
Yeah.
had I think 1987 he won the Conn Smythe as a losing goalie as well, and he was
87, he won
phenomenal
the.
against the Oilers.
Yeah. Yeah. And Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe for the Oilers just this past June. And I think those are the only 3. But yeah, no, hey, playoff
Probably.
experiences. Yeah, Kawhi's is definitely up there. So, guys, this is in fact the last episode of What's Up the Sports podcast because we are going to flip to a new format. Connected with some great sportscasters from Mississippi. They have appeared on our show, and we're just going to show you a quick snippet. We do have a couple of edits to
Are we
take
being
care
fired?
of regarding the intro video. Absolutely not. No. I need to.
Okay.
I need to elevate this. I need to elevate this joint, and you guys are gonna be the reasons why. So, without further ado, here is a sample of what is to come.
You are listening to Voice of the Fans Sportscast, brought to you by none other than the voices of the fans.
So,
Nice.
What's Up the Sports podcast will be known as Voice of the Fans Canada, and definitely looking forward
Like
to seeing. Yeah, no, thank you so much, and
Goosebumps.
definitely.
That was cool.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, no, they those guys did an incredible job, and hey, Tony, like, geez, it's going to be 5 years since we started this podcast, huh? It's
20 years.
yeah,
that 20 years that we've known each other.
Yeah. All those, and I feel honestly, Seneca College, that feels maybe that felt like 5 years ago, but definitely having a blast doing it. Neel, and obviously you're excitement to and your availability to join the podcast. I definitely appreciate you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looking forward to keeping this train rolling.
Yeah, for sure. Dan Leggieri as well. We're definitely looking forward to bringing him back on, and yeah, let's keep it going. But for Tony Antoniou, Neel Katarey, and Dan Leggieri, I am Randy Courret. For the last time, saying thank you for joining What's Up the Sports podcast. October 1st, we're going to flip things over to Voice of the Fans Canada. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe. We will talk to you next time.
Boom. All right, man.